Hi there, my name is Wendy, and in this video I'm going to show you how to make one of these crocheted Nordic gnomes. The one I'm making today is the one here with the grey hat and the red jumper, but I will also show you how to crinkle up the beard. I'm using UK stitch terminology, and you can make this gnome simply by following this YouTube tutorial, but I will also put a link in here and the notes below where you can download a free PDF printable pattern. But the first thing we'll do is to take a look at the yarn, tools and equipments that you'll need, and then we can get going. Yarn wise, I'm using a standard UK weight double knitting yarn in acrylic, and I've got about 25 grams in each of my colours. The one I'm using here today is Stylecraft Special DK, but you can of course use any make of your choice. So I'm using one for a skin tone colour, the white for the beard, red for the sweater and grey for the hat and the lower body. And you'll also be wanting to have some synthetic toy stuffing. Hook wise, you'll want a 3.5mm crochet hook or a 3.25mm crochet hook. You'll need a sharp pair of scissors for trimming up the beard afterwards, and then a wool type darning needle for darning in your ends and stitching on your limbs. And then finally you'll want a couple of stitch markers just to keep track of your rounds as we're working in spirals. So now I'll bring the overhead camera and we'll get going. The first part I'm going to make is the body section, which is starting from the lower body, then goes up to the jumper part and the head, and that's worked all as one piece. So to start off, I'm going to make a slip knot, and I'm going to make 2 chain. And then, as you very often see with amigurumi, we're going to miss the first chain that's underneath the hook, and we're going to be working into the first chain we made, which is the one directly after our slip knot. So round 1 consists of making 8 double crochet in that first chain that we made. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And then I'm going to put a stitch marker in that last stitch that I made, and I'm going to do that on every round with every piece, because otherwise you'll just completely lose count of your stitches. So for round 2, I'm going to work 2 double crochets in each stitch. So I know I've got 8 stitches here, so I'm just going to have a quick count back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I know I'm going to start with this stitch. So round 2, I'm going to end up with 16 double crochets, working 2 in each stitch. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then I'm going to take my stitch marker out of that last stitch, and I know that's where I'm making my last 2 double crochets. So 15 and 16, and then I'm going to pop that stitch marker back in, and round 2 is now complete. For round 3, I'm going to be working 1 double crochet in the first stitch and then 2 double crochets in the second stitch. So that's called a double crochet increase. So we're going to be working all the way around, making 1 in one stitch, then 2 in the next, and then our stitch count will come up to 24 in total. So that's my first stitch, and then I'm working 2 into this stitch, so I've made 3. I'm making 1 in the next stitch and then 2 in the next stitch, and I've made 6. Then I'm making 1 in the following stitch and 2 in the next stitch, and I've made 9. Then 1 in the next stitch and then 2 in the following stitch, so I'm now at 12. So 1 in the next stitch, 2 in the following stitch, and I'm at 15. 1 in the next stitch, 2 in the following stitch, and I'm at 18. 1 in the next stitch, 2 in the following stitch, and I'm at 21. And then 1 in the next stitch, and then I can take my stitch marker out and make my final 2 stitches, and I've now made 24 stitches in round 3. So I'm going to put my stitch marker back in again so that I don't lose count. So I'm now ready for round 4, and in this round I'm making 2 double crochet in a row and then 2 double crochet in the following stitch. So here we go again. So I'm making 1, 2, and then 2 in the next stitch. So that's stitch number 3 and 4. And then again 1, 2, and 2 in the next stitch, and I've now made 8. And then 1, 2, and then 2 in the next stitch, and I've made 12. We can see where this is going now, can't we? And then it's 1, 2, and 2 in the next stitch, and I've made 16. And then 1 and 2 and 2 in the next stitch, and I've made 20. And then it's 1, 2, and 2 in the next stitch, and I've made 24. And then it's 1, 2, 2 in the next stitch, and it's 28. And then I'm going to take my stitch marker out, and it's 1, 2, and 2 in the next stitch, and I've made 32 stitches. Now I'm going to put my stitch marker back in again, and we're ready for round 5. So following the same pattern now, we're now going to make 3 double crochets in a row and then a double crochet increase, making 2 in the following stitch. So it's 1, 2, 3 double crochets in a row and then 2 double crochets into the next stitch. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and then 2 in the next stitch. 5 stitches made. Then again 1, 2, 3, and then 2 in the next stitch. So I'm going to continue this all the way around the edge, making 3 double crochet, 1 after each other, and then 2 double crochet in the following stitch. So I'll see you at the end. And I can take my stitch marker out, and I'm making 2 in the final stitch, and I'm now at 40 stitches in my rounds. So that's round 1 to 5 complete, and you should now have 40 stitches, and that is the base of the body. So you're now going to work 4 rows in the same colour, just straight, just going round and round in a spiral, working a double crochet in each stitch. I've now taken my stitch marker out and am about to make my last stitch in this round, but I'm going to be joining into a new colour now. I'm going to be joining into red to make the sweater for the gnome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my hook through both sides of the stitch, yarn over the hook and pull it through to 2, but instead of finishing it off in the grey, I'm now going to use my red. So I'm just going to have probably about 5 or 6 centimeters of yarn hanging down, and I'm going to pop that in my hook when I've got the last 2 stitches on my hook, and I'm going to finish off that last double crochet that way. I'm also going to cut my grey yarn, and what I'll do is after I've made my next round in the red, these 2 short ends, I'm going to tie them off and secure them so that they're neatly out of the way. So now I've joined in my new yarn, I'm going to work the next 7 rounds straight in the new colour for my sweater, and I'll have a total of 40 stitches in each round. So I'll see you after I've completed round 7. I've now worked 7 rounds in the colour for the jumper for my gnome. So for round 8, I'm going to be working 3 double crochet and then making a double crochet decrease. So I've worked 3 double crochet in a row, and then I'm going to take my hook and I'm going to put it through both sides of the next stitch, yarn over the hook and pull it back to 2. And then I'm going to stop and I'm going to put the hook through the next stitch, yarn over the hook, pull it back through. I have 3 stitches on my hook, yarn over the hook and pull it through to 1, and that has decreased 2 stitches down to 1. So I'm going to work another 3 double crochet, so that's 1, 2 and 3, and then I'm going to work another double crochet decrease. So it's hook through both sides of the stitch, yarn over the hook, pull it back to 2. Then I'm moving on to the next stitch, hook through both sides of the stitch, yarn over the hook, pull it back through, and I've got 3 stitches on my hook, yarn over the hook, pull it through to 1, and I've decreased another 2 stitches down to 1. So again, I'm going to make 3 double crochet, and then I'm going to make another double crochet decrease. So it's hook through both sides of the stitch, yarn over the hook, pull it back to 2, move on to the next stitch, hook through both sides of the stitch, yarn over the hook, pull it back to 3, yarn over the hook and pull it through to 1. So I'm now going to work the rest of this round working 3 double crochet in a row and then 1 double crochet decrease till I've got back to my stitch marker at the beginning of the round. My next round, which is round 9 of the jumper, is just work straight. So I'll just see you at the other side. So we've now reached the end of the round, and we're going to start round 10, which is another decreasing round, but this time it's just making 2 double crochet and then the double crochet decrease. So here we go again, 1, 2, and then I'm going to make that double crochet decrease again. So it's hook through both sides of the stitch, yarn over the hook and pull it back to 2, hook through both sides of the next stitch, yarn over the hook and pull it back to 3 stitches on my hook, yarn over the hook and pull it back through to 1. So again, 2 double crochets in a row and then a double crochet decrease, hook through both sides of the stitch, yarn over the hook, pull it back to 2, move on to the next stitch, hook through both sides of the stitch, yarn over the hook, pull it back to 3, yarn over the hook and pull it back to 1, and again 2 double crochets and a double crochet decrease, and we're going to repeat this all the way around until we get back to our stitch marker, and we're going to change to the flesh colour. I've just reached the point where I'm going to make my last double crochet decrease, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to join in my new colour. So I'm going to put my hook through both sides of the stitch, yarn over the hook and pull it back through to 2. Move on to the next stitch, put the hook through both sides of the stitch, yarn over the hook and pull it back to 3. But this time I'm going to take my new colour and I'm going to pop that in the hook and pull through that final time with the flesh colour. And now I'm ready to work round 11, and I'm going to snip off the end of my red coloured yarn. So now for rows 11 and 12, I'm going to work 2 rounds just straight of double crochet, and after the first round I'm just going to tie off to secure those loose ends from the colours that I just joined. So I'll just see you after I've made the 2 rounds. So we're now going to have a round where we're increasing, but the increasing is really simple because all you're doing is making 2 double crochets in the same stitch to make the increase. So for round 13, we're going to make 2 double crochets. So that's 1, 2, and then 2 double crochets in 1 stitch. Okay, so 2 double crochets, one after the other, 1, 2, and then 2 double crochets in the same stitch, and again 1 double crochet after the other, so that's 1 in each stitch, and then 2 double crochets in the same stitch. Okay, so I've made 2 double crochets, one after each other in separate stitches, and then 2 double crochets in the same stitch, and I'm going to continue that until I get back to my stitch marker again. So next, rounds 14 and 15 are both worked straight, so I'll see you at the beginning of round 16 to start doing some more decreasing. Now we've reached row 16, I'm going to make 3 double crochet, and I'm back to making a double crochet decrease. So that's hook through both sides of the stitch, yarn over the hook, pull it back to 2, then hook through both sides of the next stitch, yarn over the hook, pull it back, and I have 3 stitches on my hook, yarn over the hook and pull it back to 1. So it's 3 double crochets in a row, 1, 2 and 3, and my double crochet decrease. Hook through both sides of the stitch, yarn over the hook, pull it back to 2, hook through both sides of the next stitch, yarn over the hook, pull it back to 3, yarn over the hook, pull it back to 1. So I'm going to repeat this, making 3 double crochets in a row, followed by a double crochet decrease, decreasing 2 stitches down to 1. Round 17 is now a straightforward round, just making 1 double crochet in each stitch. So again, I'll just continue round and see you ready for the next round. I'm now ready for round 18, and that's another decrease round, and this time I'm making 2 double crochets in a row followed by the double crochet decrease. So that's my 2 double crochets in a row, and then here we go, that's my decrease. So again, 1, 2 double crochets, one after the other in a row, and a double crochet decrease. Again, 1 double crochet, 2 double crochets in a row, followed by the double crochet decrease. 1, 2, and a decrease, and I will continue again until I've reached the end of this round. So now, before I go on to make my final 2 rounds, I'm going to pop some stuffing in my gnome, otherwise the hole will get too small. So I've just taken my hook off and enlarged the loop so that I don't lose it. And when I stuff my toys, I tend to do it just with smaller lumps and then just push them in with the crochet hook rather than trying to push a large amount in at the same time, because otherwise it can get a bit lumpy. So it's much better just do it little bit by little bit, and then you've got more leverage and you're able to spread it around more easily and get an even distribution than popping in one large lump. Okay, so I'm now going to put my crochet hook back on, and I'm going to pop that stitch marker back in that last stitch so that I know where the beginning of the round was. And I've just got 2 rounds to do now, so I'm going to make 1 double crochet and a double crochet decrease. I'm having to keep my finger down on the top of his head now to stop the stuffing from coming out. So it's 1 double crochet and 1 double crochet decrease. Trying to keep that stuffing firmly in place. Okay, so all the way around, 1 double crochet and 1 double crochet decrease. One double crochet and 1 double crochet decrease. I'm going to make that last one. I'm going to take my stitch marker out now for this. So it's 1 double crochet and 1 double crochet decrease. And then basically we want to close up the hole on the top of his head. So basically now I just do a double crochet decrease, double crocheting 2 together all the way around until the hole is completely covered at the top of his head. I'm just going round in this spiral, closing it up. Almost there now. We didn't catch that last stitch. Just pull it through that last one. Probably only got 1 or 2 stitches left to do now. This is it. And with that, I'm going to cut my thread. Pull it through, and then I can take a darning needle and I can thread this end through the head to finish off, and that is the main body done. So we're now ready to make his nose and his arms and legs. Now the limbs are all made in the same manner. The only difference is that the arms are slightly longer and they've got a colour change after round 2. So to make the limbs, I'm going to get the colour that I'm using for the hand, and I'm going to make a slip knot and 2 chain, just as we did when we made the main body. So that's 1, 2. Then I'm going to miss the chain that's underneath my hook, and in the first chain that I made, which is next to the slip knot, I'm going to make 5 double crochet. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. And then I'm just going to count back my stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I know that that is my first stitch to work in for the next round. So for round 2, we need to make 10 double crochet. So that's going to be 2 double crochet in each stitch. So that's 1, 2, that was in one stitch, 3, 4, that was in the second stitch, 5, 6, that was in the third stitch, 7th, 8th, that was in the fourth stitch, 9th and 10th in the 5th stitch. But before I finish off that last double crochet, I'm going to finish it off with the new colour. In this case it's red that I'm going to be using for the sleeves, but whatever your sleeve colour is, just pull through the last 2 loops with that new colour to make the join. Now I'm just going to work one more round before I then tie off my loose ends. So I'm going to work 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10. And then I can just tie off those 2 ends. And then cut the ends off. Just leave it about 3 centimeters because that will get tucked inside. And then when we're working, we want to make sure that we've got our work the right way out. And I'm now going to use a stitch marker in the last stitch of each round, so that when we look at it, otherwise I'm going to get completely lost as to where I am. So now I'm going to work another round. So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then take that stitch marker out the next stitch and make my 10th double crochet. And remember to pop that stitch marker back in, because otherwise you will not know where you are in the rounds. So that's 2 rounds in the red made, and I've got to make another 5 more rounds before I'm ready to decrease at the top. But as I said, this procedure is exactly the same for the feet and the arms, except you haven't got the colour change to do with the feet, and you're going to be working a shorter amount of rounds. So I'll continue now till I've reached the end of round 9. Before I decrease to do any shaping at the top of the arm, I'm just going to pop a small amount of stuffing in. However much you decide to stuff your limbs is down to personal choice. I tend to just pop a little bit in the bottom, in the ends of the hands and the feet, and leave the arms fairly empty and the legs fairly empty so that they lay closer to the body. So now I've got that in, I'm going to make my double crochet decreases. So I have 10 stitches and I'm going to reduce it down to 5. So I'm going to double crochet 2 together 5 times. So I'm going to put my hook through both sides of the stitch, yarn over the hook and pull it back through to 2. Then I'm going to put my hook through both sides of the next stitch, yarn over the hook and pull it back to 3. And then I'm going to put the yarn over the hook and pull it all together. And that's 1 double crochet decrease done. So for my second, I'm going to go through the next stitch, yarn over the hook, pull it back to 2, stop and put it through the next stitch, yarn over the hook and pull it back through, and I have 3 stitches on my hook. Then it's yarn over the hook and pull it back to 1. So for my third double crochet decrease, it's hook through both sides of the stitch, yarn over the hook, pull it back to 2. Move on to the next stitch, hook through both sides of the stitch, yarn over the hook, pull it back through, 3 stitches on my hook, yarn over the hook and pull it through to 1. Then onto my fourth double crochet decrease, hook through both sides of the stitch, yarn over the hook, pull back to 2, hook through both sides of the next stitch, yarn over the hook, pull it back to 3, and then it's yarn over the hook and pull it back to 1. And now I've got my last 2 stitches where I'm going to be working my last double crochet decrease. So it's through both sides of the stitch, yarn over the hook, pull it back through to 2. I can take my stitch marker out, and then I'm going to go to the next stitch, hook through both sides of the stitch, yarn over the hook, pull it back through. I've got 3 stitches on my hook, yarn over the hook and pull it back to 1, and that is it, done. So I want to make sure that I've got enough yarn left that I can sew my arm to the body. So it's yarn over the hook and finish off, and that is my arm complete. So remember, it's exactly the same procedure for the arms and the legs, except that the legs are slightly shorter and there's no colour change. When it comes to sewing on the arms, I just angled them very slightly coming forwards, and I just stitched them on 1 row down from the top line of the jumper. Making the legs is an easier and shorter version of making the arms because there's no colour change to deal with, and also it's just got less rows. So I'm going to make 2 chain, miss the first chain under the hook and make 5 double crochet in the next chain down. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So that's round 1 of my leg done. So I'm going to count back these 5 stitches that I've made. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I know that is the first stitch that I'm going to be working into for round 2. Now round 2, just like the arms, is working 2 double crochets in each stitch, so I'll end up with 10 double crochets altogether. So that's 1, that's my second double crochet in the first stitch, that's another 2, so I've made 4. That's another 2, so I've made 6. That's another 2, so I've made 8. And that's another 2, and I've now made 10. So I'm going to put my stitch marker in now so that I don't lose count of where the end of these rounds are. So now, working on these 10 stitches, I'm going to work another 5 rounds and I'll see you at the other end. So I've now made my 5 rounds and I've got 2 things left to do. I want to pop a bit of stuffing into the leg itself, and then I'm going to do 1 round of decreases to close up the opening at the top. So I'm going to take my stitch marker out now, and I'm going to get a small amount of stuffing. Really, it is quite small. It's probably just a little bit bigger than a marble, or a grape size maximum. And then I'm going to just push that in, and I tend to just stuff the ends of the limbs, and leave these top areas a bit flatter, because it helps it act like a little wedge. You'll see in a minute when I put it against the gnome to help support it. So I'm just going to work my last round now, working 5 double crochet decreases. So I'm going to make my first one here. So that's 1, and then again, that's my second one. That little tail end is getting in the way. So that's my second. My third. My 4th double crochet decrease, and my 5th. So now I've done that, I'm just going to fasten off, allowing enough length to sew in my ends. And as you can see, by just putting that little amount in the end of the foot, it's created almost a tapered end that I can just put against my gnome and just sort of make like a little wedge, and it gives it a bit of support. So I'm going to show you that now. So I'm just going to cut off this little tail end that was from the slip knot at the beginning. And as you can see, this has almost got like a wedge shape. It's almost like a doorstep. So if I just do this here and I push this in, it acts as a support when it's sewn to the gnome, to stop him from falling over. So when it comes to placing your limbs, you can literally just push the leg in to fit like that, and then you've got it in the perfect position to stitch to the body. To make the nose is quite simple. I've made my slip knot and 2 chain just as before, and again I'm missing the first chain under the hook, and this time I'm making 6 double crochet in my first round. So that's 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, and then I'm going to be working 2 double crochet in each of those 6 stitches. So I'm doubling it up now to 12 stitches in my next round. So I'm going to put a stitch marker in so that I don't lose count of where my last stitch is. So that's 1, 2 double crochets in the first stitch, 3, 4, that's 2 double crochets in the second stitch, 5, 6, that's 2 double crochets in the third stitch, 7, 8, that's 2 double crochets in the fourth stitch, 9, 10, that's 2 double crochets in the fifth stitch, and then I'm going to take my stitch marker out and make my last 2 double crochets in the sixth stitch. So that's the second round complete. Then I'm going to put my stitch marker back in that last stitch, so again I don't lose count of where I am. So I'm just going to count back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So I know that's the first stitch of the next round. And for round 3, we're just working 1 double crochet in each stitch. take my stitch marker out and make my 12th stitch. I'm going to push my nose, make sure that I'm working from the right side outwards, and then pop my stitch marker back in. And whereas I had 12 stitches here, I'm going to make 6 double crochet decreases to bring it back down to 6 stitches again for my last round, which is round 4. So then I'm going to cut my end of the yarn and fasten off, leaving enough yarn to sew my nose to the face. So I'm going to leave a fairly long end here. This is an opportunity, if you feel that the hole at the front of your nose is slightly large, you can turn your nose inside out, get that tail end, and just thread a darning needle through the end, and then just whip that round. If you need to just tighten up that hole from the slip knot at the very beginning, then you can just fasten it off. Cut the end, leave about 3 centimeters, and then turn it back the right way out. And I would suggest that you have just a little bit of stuffing. That's turn round. Just have a little bit of stuffing that you can just pop in so that it's ready to stitch to the face. And I'm just going to push that in with my crochet hook. So that's ready to now be sewn onto the front of the face.
We've now reached the end of part 1 of this video, so please join me in part 2 where we'll carry on making the gnome.